Good afternoon and welcome to Emory University's Goizueta Business School. Today's web chat we're going to be talking about our Executive MBA admissions process. I'm Nicole Hidpass, Director of Program Marketing, and I will be moderating today's chat. I'm joined by Carolyn from our admissions office and two of our current Executive MBA students. I'll let them introduce themselves shortly, but first I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. I want to let you know that we are taping this chat in its entirety, so if you miss anything at any point or have to hop off early, we will be sending it to you via email within the next week. I also wanted to say that we want this chat to be as interactive as possible. Many of you submitted questions when you registered. Thank you for those. We're going to start with those. But if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to submit them. We'll do our best to answer them on air. We also have a team of folks behind the scenes that will help answer questions as well. So with that, I will have our guests here introduce themselves, and then we'll dive into the questions. Carolyn?
Okay. Hi there, my name is Carolyn Grimes. I am the Senior Associate Director of Admissions for our Executive MBA programs. That includes both the modular and the weekend MBA programs. Many of you I've spoken with probably already, but look forward to working with you as we move forward.
Hello everyone, my name is Emmanuel Miller. I am a risk finance analyst at GE Power Services, industrial engineer by background. I'm a weekend MBA, Executive MBA 19 member, and look forward to this conversation.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrew Garant. I'm in commercial finance at the Coca-Cola Company. I am a modular Executive MBA program, 2019.
All right, thank you very much. So the first question, we'll start with you, Carolyn. For people evaluating whether an Executive MBA makes sense for them, what type of candidates are most successful in our programs?
Well, our programs are very diverse. We intentionally bring in people from a wide array of backgrounds. So the professional role, while it's important in terms of progression and years of work experience, the industry that you're in or the functional role is not quite as key. We just want to see that you have progressed and that you have significant contributions to make to the classroom. So the type of person that is successful is someone who is driven to succeed, who is accomplished and possibly a subject matter expert in their field. A lot of times they will have managerial experience, but not always. Sometimes they've managed significant projects within their companies, but not necessarily people. And people that have enough academic heft behind them to be successful in what is a rigorous MBA experience.
And for Emmanuel and Andrew, I'd love to hear from you about how you decided to pursue an Executive MBA and what criteria you evaluated as you were selecting a program.
Go ahead.
I'll let you go first.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the biggest things that drew me to the Emory program was the diversity. I wanted to build my skill set. I wanted to continue my education as well as provide additional resources within my employment.
And on my case, I took a personal process, so I focused on some of the gaps I saw in my own career path. I didn't focus so much in finance and strategy. I came from a strong operations background, so the focus areas that the program offered were a big consideration for pursuing this.
And Carolyn, if someone's interested in both of our programs or they're not sure which one's the right fit, what would you recommend the steps that they take to evaluate the two?
Sure, that actually happens a lot. Candidates come into our pipeline and we start talking with them about the Executive MBA program, and they don't necessarily understand the differences between the modular and the weekend program. So that's something that can be cleared up in a number of ways throughout your research process. Number one, at the very minimum, you can apply to both programs at the same time using the same application. It's no additional steps other than checking both boxes that you're interested in the weekend and the modular program. And then your applications will be viewed and reviewed independently for those two formats. Secondly, visiting a class is a really great way. if you're sure that the Executive MBA program is the right one for you, but you're not sure modular or weekend, you can sit in on a class for both formats and see which classroom dynamic you enjoy, which one do you feel like you're more on par with the professional experience of the students. And then kind of in a little bit more granular way, just speaking with admissions directors, either myself or Hope Crossan, about the differences or the commonalities between the two formats. And it's also important and a key factor to get your manager involved and find out which type of format works the best for your company, because that's going to be a really important factor. And don't forget your family. So there are a lot of things to look into, but there are people to help you along that path.
And I would also echo, getting your manager's support is key to this whole process. My leadership was very supportive in both the application process, and then they gave me the flexibility to take time when I needed it throughout the first term, and they've been a real partner in the process. But then on the family piece, my wife and I decided to do the program together, and it's been a great compliment. It's provided us with an opportunity to work together and build new strengths and relationships throughout the network, but then also some competitive juice, if you will. So we compete in a healthy and productive way.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
The two of you in the program together. I don't know that we'd go that far to make that recommendation, but you never know if it works for you.
Yeah.
So Carolyn, you mentioned that students have the opportunity, or prospects have the opportunity to engage with students and alumni, whether it's a classroom visit or at various events. I'd love to hear from the two of you what opportunities you took advantage of before applying to kind of get a sense of the community here.
So I was fortunate to work with some Emory alum, and two of them participated in different programs. So one was an evening student and another was a weekend student. And then I attended several information sessions where I got to speak with admissions reps and ask some of the questions that I had at the time, particularly around the structure of the programs and the timing, just to get a feel for what it would be like. But really what set it over the edge for me was visiting and speaking with students who recently graduated from the program or who were currently in the WMBA program. Just getting their input really helped me solidify that decision.
So very similar, at Coca-Cola there's quite a few alumni and current students, so I had the ability to talk with a lot of individuals in the various formats within the executive program, the weekend as well as the modular. That really helped me to kind of understand the flexibility, the courses, and the opportunities within the program.
Excellent. So, Carolyn, do you want to talk a little bit about the types of events that candidates can take advantage of? I know we mentioned class visits, but there are other opportunities that they can engage with us.
Yes, you can see them all on our website, but we do a number of things every month. So like today we did an around town coffee event out in Duluth. We try to do those every month in a different part of Atlanta. Hopefully that we can catch you on your way to work. They're from 7 to 9 a.m. So those are a great chance to kind of sit down with us and have a sort of quick informal discussion over coffee about the program. We host an on-campus informational breakfast every month. We have one coming up next Tuesday where you can come to campus prior to work again. We find that that works well for our candidates. And sit down and visit with us and a few other people and learn more about the program and its details. You can schedule a personal consultation. We have monthly WebEx information sessions where you can log on from your office or your home or wherever you may be over the lunch hour and learn more about the program there. Those are interactive as well. Of course, the class visits, you can register for those online at your convenience. Those are a great way once you have done a bit of research and talked to some people and really want to get more of a taste of the program. I strongly recommend those. And we offer personal consultations daily and on one Saturday each month. So you can come to campus, get a tour, talk with one of the admissions officers, and get the details that are specific to your situation. So I remember when Emmanuel came in, because one of our alums actually brought Emmanuel and his wife in to talk about the program, and that's a great entree. I mean, if you know somebody that's done the program, having them provide an introduction or even bringing you to campus, they aren't all quite that accommodating, but you know, it's a great sort of segue into the more personal interaction. It's not at all necessary, but it is a nice step. So for candidates that are in the research phase, those are some of the opportunities that are available to you.
That's terrific. Many ways to engage, whatever fits your schedule. So let's dive into some of the components of the actual application. The interview is something that is required of all applicants. I'd love to know your feedback on what are some of the most important tips you can give on how they can really ace the interview.
Okay. Well, the interview, of course, is a very important part of the application process. All of our Executive MBA students have interviewed. All of our candidates who complete their applications have interviewed. What we're looking for in the interview, and oftentimes we've already interacted with you several times, so we try to ensure that you're meeting different people who are representatives of the school. So if I did a personal consultation with you, there's a good chance your interview will be with my colleague Hope or with Julie Barefoot, and vice versa. What we want to know from you is, you know, of course, about your academic and your professional background. In order to make your interview really successful, just take some time the day before. There's no official preparation that you need to do, but we'd like to see that candidates are semi-familiar with the program, that you've done some research. We also like to see that you have reflected back on some of your prior roles and responsibilities, and that you have you know, thought about things that made your efforts successful or not successful, about holes in your sort of your education or in your responsibilities that make an MBA a great fit for you at this time. We want to know why you're interested in Goizueta, what your goals are for the short term and long term. So really just taking a few minutes to sit back and think about your past experience and where you want to be going forward and how the MBA is going to help you get there. Those are the key elements of the interview. Interviews are done one-on-one. We have not reviewed any other elements of the application prior to the interview, with the exception of a GMAT waiver if you've requested that. I think we'll talk more about that shortly. So if we ask you questions during the interview that you've covered in other elements of your application, it's only because we do our interviews what we call blind, so we don't have any preconceived notions about your experience.
So Andrew and Emmanuel, you guys have successfully interviewed, clearly, because you're in the program. I'd love to hear from you how you prepared for your interview, any tips you have for candidates.
Yeah, I think, you know, making sure you understand your strengths, what your opportunities are, and what you want to get out of the program are key. Making sure that you are very transparent about that in the interview process is great, because as you think through what the opportunities are and how you can add the value to the program.
Exactly. I would echo everything Andrew just said. For me, the big part of my preparation for the interview was answering two questions: why Emory and why now? And you know, through the research I did and interviews, informational interviews with alumni or current students, you know, actually getting to meet some faculty like Doug Bowman, and coming in and seeing the program, it really help gauge my own interview questions, and you know, help me kind of prep with some questions that I had for Caroline, who did my interview. But then also just gave me an opportunity to take my experiences from, you know, just a paper resume and make it real, to communicate to Caroline and the committee why I was a strong candidate. And so I was a great vehicle for not only showing the progression and the leadership skills, but also like what I was looking forward to gaining from the program.
And I think they brought up some important parts. So another thing that we're trying to discern from the interview is not just what the school can do for you, but also what you are bringing to the table to offer, you know, the other students in the class. Because executive MBA programs are very conversational. You know, you're going to interact a lot with the people that are sitting to your left and to your right through conversations with the class. And so knowing that you are willing to share from your experience and that you're not just here to learn from others is a key thing that we're trying to discern from the interview.
So Carolyn, we had a question just come in, and the question is, if I'm not a local candidate, if I don't live locally, how do I participate in the interview process? Do I have to fly in? Are there other avenues for engaging with the interview?
So yeah, we actually work with a lot of candidates who are not local to the Atlanta area, and we do interviews by Skype. Like I said, we do them on Saturdays. In the past, we've done them by phone. Usually we prefer Skype over the phone because you can just get so much more from a person if you can see their body language. So that's certainly an option. You can, when you register for the interview on the website, on the application process page, you will have the opportunity to check the box as to how you would like to have your interview done. However, if you are here in Atlanta, the interviews should be in person.
All right, so let's move on to the essays, the dreaded essays. We know that they're meant to, in part, explain someone's work experience, but how else can a candidate use the essays to talk about how they might be a good fit for our program?
What we're looking for in the essays, aside from obviously verbal skills, is kind of maturity and reflection. And so what we really want you to do, especially in our significant accomplishment essay, is rather than just doing an overview of your whole career, really think about something that you've done in recent years that had a large impact on your organization or on the way you approach your job. And from a leadership perspective, or there's a lot of freedom in picking your topic, but it's helpful to us if you're fairly more specific than you are broad in thinking about your essays. Also, pay attention to the word counts. They don't have to be literal, but if we ask for 300 words and you submit 3 pages on a topic, that's going to be slightly concerning.
All right, that's good feedback. Manuel, Andrew, how did you utilize the essays?
For me, on this particular topic, the career, most significant career accomplishment, I took that as an opportunity to do some reflection. I focused on a project that had a lasting impact on the organization. It was a very challenging project. It was just myself and one other colleague, and the breadth and the quality of the output was very impressive. Not to boast, but it gave me a way to highlight some of the challenges that were involved in the project and kind of parallel that to taking on a new education endeavor, right? And then also show how I had the ability to adapt and to take on challenging circumstances and complete the goal. So it showed them that I not only was thinking about my career accomplishment, but also what that would look like in an academic setting.
So to echo what Emmanuel said, very, very similar experience. I think the essays also helped me prepare for the interview because it helped me to think through what those strengths were, what some of the areas that I wanted to discuss and bring up within my resume during our conversation. So I think it was great help preparing.
I will add too that your essays don't always have to reflect like a big success that you've had. Sometimes your greatest success can be evaluating a failure or something that didn't go well for you at work and what you learned from that and how you changed from that and how you grew. So think broadly and creatively about your essays and don't feel like they have to fit a particular mold.
Yeah, that's a really good point you made there. So we also offer, or there's the option, right, of an optional essay. Mm-hmm. Is it really optional? And how can a candidate best use that if they decide to submit it?
Right. The optional essay is indeed optional. I would say a small percentage of our candidates actually do an optional essay. What it's there for is to address a particular hole in your application that you feel may be perceived as a weakness. So some examples may be one semester in college where you performed very poorly compared with the rest of the time there. You know, was there something happening during that time that caused that reaction? Or maybe a gap in your resume. Was it a health reason, or, you know, what was going on? So we review your applications in great detail. And so if there's something like that that's missing or it's going to stand out to us, that's your chance to tell us, because we will notice and we will inquire about it. So it's best to just go ahead and put it out there.
So there's also a video essay that's part of the application. What advice do you have for folks on how to utilize that video essay?
Yeah, the video essay is something new that we're doing this year. These guys didn't have a chance to participate in that, but it's really a way for you to show us a little bit of your personality. What we're looking for, it's only about 90 seconds long. You have several attempts, opportunities to do it over if you want to do that. It doesn't need to be terribly scripted. The topics, there are several different topics to choose from. Just choose one to talk about, and it's generally positive things, like something that you are passionate about outside of work and family. It could be one of our core values that really resonates with you, or the best piece of advice that you've ever received. And just kind of think about it for a few minutes and just start talking. I mean, you know, you can redo it if you're not happy with the first, second, or third take, but you know, share a little bit about kind of your personal interests with us. That's what we're looking for there. And that's not an optional essay, that is required.
All right, thank you very much. We are going to move on now to recommendation letters. Carolyn, what's the best advice you can give when it comes to recommendation letters and how someone decides who to actually choose and ask to submit those?
So the recommendation is a very important part of your application. Generally, what we're looking for is somebody that knows you well professionally. It's much more important for a recommender to have real knowledge of your, you know, sort of your work style and history than for it to be somebody with a big, well-known name. So usually we look for a manager, or and maybe your manager's manager. It could be, if you don't have that, you know, that sort of line of authority, it could be a previous manager or even a client. But just somebody that you've worked with closely for enough time that they would be able to speak to your strengths and weaknesses, and, you know, kind of your aspirations and how the MBA would serve you.
How did the two of you choose who were going to submit your letters of recommendation?
Yes, I'll go first. So fortunately, I developed a great mentorship relationship with one of the partners and managers at my previous firm, and so I didn't hesitate in thinking who to ask to, you know, offer a recommendation. And then my current manager, and, you know, we developed a pretty good working relationship, and you know, we shared, you know, like different personal goals, and you know, for me, it was as simple as asking to take them to lunch, and, you know, sharing, you know, what my thoughts were around the MBA, and also asking, you know, what their experiences were. And both of them, without me actually asking, offered to write a letter of recommendation, and yeah, I was kind of flattered by that. And then, you know, it just it kind of made the process a lot easier, having someone that I developed a relationship with, you know, and approaching them to do that.
Yeah, so very similar. My direct manager offered to do the recommendation when he knew that I was applying for the program. I also talked with some of my cross-collaborative business partners about sending recommendation letters. I think those that understand the MBA program, those that can speak to your strengths, your achievements, as well as some of the opportunities that you're looking to obtain through the program, I believe those would be the best to do the recommendations.
And I think it's important to note that the recommendations are not a freehand letter of recommendation. When you enter in the recommender's information on the application, they will be sent a specific form to fill out. Part of it is a chart that will allow them to sort of rank you on certain areas, and then there's some open text boxes as well. If they want to supplement that with a letter, they can. Another thing to note, 2 recommendations are required, but some people want to do more than 2, and that is also fine. What I would recommend is if you get more than 3, we do need to wait for every recommendation to come in that you enter. So usually what I suggest is after 2 recommendations, if anybody else volunteers to write a letter for you, or if there's somebody else you really want, just ask them to freehand a letter and to send it to us, and we can add it to your application file, but then we won't be waiting on it to get done in order for your file to be complete later on.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to add is when you have that conversation, it's important for you to explain the timeline, and then you know, inevitably people get busy, and so there may be a need for you to follow up and you know, drop them an email or phone call and say, hey, we're approaching the deadline, just wanted to see where things were, if I could help in any way, or and then, you know, also Emory does a good job of following up. Once that has been submitted, you can see it, the status changes on the application, so you're aware.
Yeah, make sure that you give enough time for recommenders to actually provide the recommendation. I would recommend at least a few weeks ahead of time to have the conversation with them, make sure that they're agreeing to do it before the application process.
Yeah, that's a great point. With the importance that we put on the recommendation, you really want to make sure that you're giving your recommender enough time to really fully think through all the value that you bring to the company and then therefore would bring to the program.
Exactly.
So Carolyn, we had a question come in that was asking about what if I don't want my employer to know that I'm pursuing this program? And I think that actually goes beyond recommendations, who to seek out for a recommendation, but how important is it that an applicant's company or organization is supportive of their pursuit of the program?
Well, it's really important to have your company on board with you. There are times when students have not informed their company that they're participating. Sometimes it works out fine, sometimes it doesn't. And I would say when it doesn't, you know, it's really not good at all from any perspective. Sort of in the middle ground, there are people that don't want their companies to know that they're applying to the program until they're admitted. And so in that case, they still wouldn't want to ask their manager to be their recommender. So in that instance, I would just ask somebody else that you've worked with closely, and that's totally fine. But you know, further down the process, we do a verification, and usually one of the things that we verify is your employment. So just keep that in mind, and you know, really, we strongly encourage you to, you know, bring your company on board with you. There are things that they're going to benefit from your engagement in the program, and you'll be able to illustrate that.
Yeah, and I would just offer from my perspective as a student, not only does the employer's financial support count, but just having them as a partner in, you know, giving you flexibility to, you know, be in class on a Friday, which is a work day, or you know, taking a global business practice trip to, you know, another country. These are things that will take away from the time you can devote to your day job, but also allow you to bring more back to the organization and have a greater impact. And so having your employer as a partner is a very important piece. I would say maybe during the admissions process, you can be discreet and approach people that you've worked with who have a good relationship with you. But once you get the admission, I would highly recommend bringing them on board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. The partnership with the employers is key. There will be times where you are busy, depending on which program you go into. So the modular program gives you the flexibility of doing things much more remotely. But however, you know, there is times where you do team meetings, you are working with others in the evenings, and so it would be great if you can have that partnership with your employer.
That's really great feedback. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to transition now over to GMAT and GRE tests. It's maybe one of the biggest concerns of applicants. They're a little further removed from their undergraduate program. It's maybe been a little while since they've taken a standardized test. Is it required for everyone? And what, if there are waivers available, what instances are those used?
Okay. So for all of our MBA programs at Goizueta, the GMAT GRE is required. But for the Executive MBA program only, there is the opportunity to request a waiver. The waiver consists of a copy of your resume, a copy of your transcripts from all degree-seeking schools, both undergrad and graduate programs. And if you've attended more than one graduate program, more than one undergrad, we would need multiple transcripts. And then the third piece is just a short essay talking about your quantitative skills. What we're really trying to figure out is specifically your quantitative abilities. We can usually pick that up from your transcripts and from your responsibilities at work. Now, we do have, which I think we're going to talk about shortly, we do have some non-traditional students that apply to the program that come from rather a non-business background. And we have tools in place to help you still be prepared and be successful in the program to kind of get you up to speed on some of those courses that you may not have had previously. So just whatever your background is, I strongly recommend that you at least apply for the waiver and see how that goes. The GMAT score or the GRE score does override any waiver. And so what happens sometimes is people will apply for the waiver, they'll get it, and then they'll say, well, I'm just going to take the test and see how I do. Because they have the waiver, they don't feel the need to prepare. And so the test may come in with a score that's subpar. And that becomes sort of a little bit tricky within the admission process. So if you're going to get a waiver, just get the waiver and stick with it and move forward from there.
So if someone either doesn't get the waiver or they decide, hey, I'm just curious how I'm going to perform, and it doesn't go well, how important or how much weight is put on that GMAT GRE score in comparison to the rest of their portfolio?
Right. It depends on how not well they do. If people really score, poorly, especially in the quant areas, it could be that we request that they take it again and bring up the score. Or if they've done moderately well, but kind of we still have some concerns, then we'll give them some other tools to help make them successful.
Okay. So we've touched now on the various aspects of the application. Let's talk about when to apply. Is it better to apply early just to get it in the earlier rounds, or should applicants really take their time, even if it's the last day you can apply? What's your recommendation for the timing of how someone submits the application?
Well, the number one important thing is to take the time that you need to put forth a solid application. That can be done. It just kind of depends on what's going on in your life and your dedication to getting it done. Some people have done it in as little as a week. Some people take a couple of years to get it done. But the most important piece is to really be thoughtful about it and to be, to do it fully and completely and not leave things out. Now, I think Emmanuel is a little bit more on the front end. Andrew, we had to throw the lasso around him a little bit, but they can weigh in more on that. There are advantages to finishing earlier. Number one, peace of mind, kind of getting yourself in the mental state of knowing that you're going to be starting a program and sort of planning out your life and how you're going to offload some of the responsibilities that you have in order to make room for this big investment of time. Number two, I talked briefly about some of the academic courses that we have online that are tools available to you. The earlier that you're admitted or start the process, the sooner you can start taking some of those classes. And that's really helpful to our students. And then, of course, getting your financial aid set up can take some time as well. And most of our students are self-funded, and so the financial aid process is sort of a key driver in starting out sort of earlier rather than later.
Yeah, so for me, once I made the decision, once my wife and I agreed this was a program that we would do together, it was a matter of 2 to 3 weeks in terms of making the decision and submitting the application altogether. And those 3 points that Caroline made are considerations that we took into account. So financing, it's big because it wasn't just one of us, it was the two of us deciding to do the program together. We wanted to make sure we knew where we stood as early as possible to, start to plan our budget and, also shape what type of responsibility shifts would have to happen from a corporate standpoint. And then lastly, it just gave us a peace of mind to have the application in early and, not have this kind of looming or feeling like a pressure to do it. So that was our take.
Yeah, so I think the key, to echo what they've said, is making sure you're thoughtful in your application, making sure that you think through the essays, think through what you're submitting. As you have questions, I would recommend reaching out to the admissions. If you do the in-class visits, talking with current students, other alumni, is key in obtaining some of the information. Or if you do have questions when you're working through it, it'll help you move a little bit faster. So I was more towards the end of it because I wanted to make sure I was thoughtful in the process. I wanted to make sure I was thinking through which actual program between the weekend as well as the modular, which one I wanted to go through. But no, I think making sure you're extremely thoughtful and in reaching out when you have the inquiries is key.
Oh, I do have one other
Sure.
thing to add. We also have, and you can see this on our website, we do have some limited scholarship opportunities. And those are generally with our May 15th deadline. So there's definitely advantages if you are in consideration of one of those scholarships to apply by the May 15th deadline rather than waiting to one of the later deadlines.
Well, that was a question that just came in.
Oh,
so
okay.
Good timing.
Good timing
Yeah.
on that. May 15th deadline if you're interested in the scholarship consideration. So let's now talk a little bit about maybe some admissions faux pas that you've seen. You've been in admissions now for more than 12 years, so you've seen the best of the best and maybe some things that could have gone a little bit better. What tips do you have for students, or what are some things that you've seen over the years that advice you can give on things to avoid doing?
Well, I got to say I really enjoy working with all of our candidates, and everybody is different, and we're pretty loose on how we interact with people. One thing I would say to give thought to is to really think through your communications. So sometimes it's difficult if people email a question and then we respond, and then they email another question and then we respond, and sometimes this happens, multiple times within a 10-minute period. So really just kind of thinking about what you want to ask, kind of making bullets and putting it all in one email so that we can address it fully and completely. Because I'm sure you've all run into this with email. You think you've answered a question and then they keep popping up. So, streamlining, recognizing that we are working with a lot of candidates, being patient as we address your questions. Another thing that's really important that we see sometimes is, regarding our events. If you register for an event and you're not able to come, just let us know. If we send you an email and it asks a question, just send a quick response, because we, for executive programs, we work with a fairly small population, so we know who you are. We want to engage with you, and if that doesn't happen, then that can stand out after a while.
Yeah, good advice.
No, it's great advice.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the interview process, engaging with Caroline. I mean, she was always available for my questions. Actually, through the interview, it seemed very conversational based. I got to learn a lot about the program, the differences between them during the actual interview as well.
Yeah, and the consultation process, and then afterwards, I sent Caroline a follow-up email, and she was very responsive, and in fact, they were very responsive all throughout the process. I mean, I remember the phone call that I got, and even once I got on campus, that relationship stayed intact. And so, be very mindful about how you communicate, and be professional. That's the advice I'd have to give.
That's great. So you both have mentioned how the application process has really forced you to be reflective and thoughtful about about your experiences in your career and how you're communicating that. I'd love to know, were there any surprises that you learned either about yourself or the program as you kind of went through this application process?
Yeah, for me, it was kind of understanding or finding out how diverse the Emory program is. I mean, there's people from all different cultures, different communities, different backgrounds. So some are very business oriented, some are very engineering oriented, or from the doctor's programs. And so for me, it was great to kind of come into a program that had so many different experiences and exposures.
And that's a great point. For me, I think the most surprising aspect was how strong the Emory alumni network was. I didn't realize how many Emory alum worked in my organization, for instance, or like as I, in casual conversation would mention I'm applying to this program. Other people were like, "Hey, you have to meet this person. They did the program and they raved about it," or you got to meet this other person. And so just knowing how strong of a network and an alumni base that I had to tap into, it was a very surprising and rewarding aspect of my process.
I feel like as soon as people do find that out when they're alumni, they want to help you.
Exactly,
they want to talk
yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
They want to share their experiences, which is great because every time you hear about someone else's experience, you can kind of take that in and kind of lead the way.
Yeah, and like if you were on the fence or debating between this program or that, once you were able to share and get some insight from other people, it really made the decision for you. That was my case.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, it's great to hear.
Yeah.
So, Carolyn, another question for you is for folks that come from non-traditional or non-business backgrounds, and we touched on this earlier when we were talking about the GMAT jury. What advice do you have for them? This is obviously an executive MBA. It's really focused on business, general management. Curriculum is at the core of it. So those folks that don't have that foundation, how can they set themselves up for success?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the keys is really not to compare yourself to other people. Everybody that we admit, pretty much everybody that we work with has positive contributions to make to the program. There's a blog actually on our website right now under student experience from one of our WIMBA Weekend EMBA 18s who comes from a journalism background. She didn't have the traditional business background. And so she actually addresses that in the blog, so check that out. But we have a number of people come in. Essentially what it boils down to is that the MBA has to be one of the most diverse degrees out there in applicability. No matter what kind of business you're in, whether you're a physician or a dentist or an attorney or an architect or a business professional, there are things in this program that can help you do your job better. And not thinking about it from the perspective of what other people that are in the program have done or are doing, because you don't even know who else is in the program, but thinking about it from what can this program do for me? What am I missing in my sort of interactions with other people, or in my job responsibilities, or in my resume for the next job that I want? So the physicians come in with no business background. They have recognized the need, especially if you're taking on administrative responsibilities. A dentist may be wanting to open up multiple shops. The reasons are as diverse as the students in our program. And so really thinking about it from a more holistic perspective about what are the courses and how are they going to help me in my career.
And Caroline, I think that diversity is what sets the executive structure apart from any other. For me, sharing a classroom with a surgeon and a lady who runs a neuroscience lab here at Emory Hospital, it's the contributions that my peers make to class discussions is very impressive. And it feels like iron sharpening iron, really. I come from an engineering background, but to hear someone's take or their experience in their setting, and then how that contributes to their perspective in a case study is very rewarding, and it also helps you to get out of your comfort zone and to grow. So that diversity is key for me.
Yeah, the lenses that each one of us brings to the table during the courses is great. There's a bond that's formed, I believe, within the different cohorts in the programs. It almost becomes like a family in a lot of ways because you're kind of going through those experiences together. You understand the different perspectives, so it's a great opportunity.
And it's interesting how, like in an organizational behavior course, how the people who come from a nonprofit background have so much more to contribute than those of us who are operational or very functional. So that contrast is very important to your education. And I think for those who come from a non-business background, I would just encourage you not to discount your experiences.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it adds a lot more value to everyone.
Absolutely.
Great feedback. Excellent. So Carolyn, let's talk a little bit more about the process. So I'm an applicant. I have fully completed the application. I've submitted it. I have done the interview with you. What happens next?
So when your application is complete, you'll get an email from our office letting you know it's complete. You can see on our website, on the admissions page, the deadlines, but also the notification dates. And on that notification date that corresponds with your deadline, you will be hearing from us. If you've been admitted, I try to give everybody a call and let them know and kind of provide them verbally with next steps. If I can't reach you, you'll still get an email relating to that. And just congratulations and on what's coming up as far as different opportunities to meet your future classmates. So there's a lot that happens after you're admitted, but you'll also gain access to our admitted student website. In there is all the information that you need about the online tutorials, about financial aid, about important dates, important things that are happening, all of your getting started to-dos, different verification processes and things like that. The deposit, of course, is the indication to us that you plan to move forward with us, and that's usually due 2 to 3 weeks after admission.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here and move away from application and admissions related questions. I'd love to hear from the two of you. And you've been in the program a little while now. What impact has it had on your professional development and the work that you're doing in your job?
Oh, go ahead first.
Okay, so for me, I can't pinpoint it as like a promotion or a new job like many of my WIMBA peers have. I think we have now 12 people who have either been promoted or taken on a new role since
In 6 months.
in 6 months.
Wow.
So very impressive. For me, I think the leadership in my group have approached me about doing new projects. One in particular I can think of is like a portfolio market analysis for some of the service agreements we have in place. So I know that may be a little technical, but just presenting me with an opportunity for a new project because of my interest or things that I've shared that I've learned throughout the program, and just keeping my manager in the loop. I remember getting the call from Caroline and telling him, hey, I'm accepted to the program, and then periodically just giving updates, sharing things that I've learned, or like, hey, I came across this case, did you do that when you were going through your MBA? And so making sure that they were a partner not only in the application process but throughout has presented me with new opportunities in my career.
Yeah, so I would say that the call you get from Caroline is probably one of the best feelings when she says you've been accepted. So I think at work, you get a lot of opportunities to take on new roles, new projects. I know for myself, my management was always very interested in the courses I was taking, what was the development that we were getting out of those courses, and how could we apply those to our business strategies, whether it be in a technical sense from maybe a data and decision management, whether it be in a channel partner sense from the marketing classes. And so the the different experiences that you get can directly relate to the work that you're doing. It allows you to have the opportunity sometimes to go to meetings that you weren't potentially involved in before, as also being able to ask the questions in those meetings, being able to give your opinions during those discussions. So I think it opens up a lot of opportunities to further your career and your experience.
That's awesome. That's terrific. All right, so that's all the questions that we had. We don't have any more coming in, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the awesome questions that you submitted, and of course, thank this panel for the great insight and feedback that they provided. If you have any additional questions or need any additional information, of course, you can please check out our website, emory.biz/EMBA, and find any information about our program there. You can also reach out to us at any time. EMBA admissions at emory.edu. You can also find personal emails and phone numbers on the website as well if you want to reach out directly to one of our admissions representatives.
And feel free to reach out to me as well.
Yeah.
That's
Me's.
a perfect example of how accessible our students and alumni are for each other. Thank you for that. So I will mention that we also have a few more web chats coming up. They're on the screen there, and I'll send these out in the email that you get with the video of this web chat. Please register for them and learn a little bit more about different aspects of the program. The next one in April is really a thought leadership webinar about building brain-friendly organizations. After that, we're going to have one on work-life balance as a student and working professional in the program. So a lot more great insights from current students on that one. And then we have a webinar in May from one of our faculty members about leveraging business relationships in competing industries. So that's going to be pretty interesting stuff. So you'll get an email from us in about a week. As I mentioned, I'll have links to these web chats for you to register as well as this video. So thanks again and have a good afternoon.